I have such an exciting project for us, our first real lace top. And in this video, I will show you how to knit the Monoko Tee, a summer top with stylish diamond lace sleeves, step by step. If we haven't met before, hi, I'm Julia Piro. I design super detailed knitting patterns with video tutorials for adventurous beginners. So you can proudly say, yes, I made this. I've had this idea for a long time. We have to knit something lacy together. So I started to think, what someone's very first lace garment should look like. How could I help you to learn essential lace techniques, but without making the whole process too complicated? And the Monoko Tee is my answer. I chose a beautiful diamond lace pattern, but instead of covering the entire top with it, we will focus only on the sleeves. It gives you just enough lace to practice without feeling overwhelmed. And by the time your Monoko Tee is finished, you will have more than a stylish summer top. You will also understand how lace works and be ready to try another lace pattern. So, what experience do you need before you begin? Ideally, you should have at least one top made with decay weight yarn behind you, or put it more simple, something knitted with a yarn similar to Drops Bell. Drops Bell. If you have already knitted my Mellow Mood top or the Nuance Tee with its mesh pattern, you can go straight to the version with lace sleeves. But I also knew that you might love this top, even if lace still seems a little too advanced. That is why I added instructions for plain stockinette sleeve too. You can give a lace version a try, and if it turns out to be too much for now, simply switch to the plain sleeves. The Monoko Tee is knitted seamlessly from the top down. We work the back and front flat, join them to knit the body in the round, and then add the sleeves and neckband. If Monoko Tee looks like the project you've been looking for, get the pattern on my website juliapiro.com or Ravelry, because the video shows you the process, while the pattern gives you the numbers for your size. I left all the links and additional information below this video. I also have one small favor to ask. If you often knit with me and haven't subscribed yet, please press the subscribed button. It might seem like a small thing, but it actually means the world for me, because it shows me that these tutorials are really helpful and encourages me to create more for you. Thank you so much for your support and for being here. And once you have your pattern and yarn ready, we can begin. And about the yarn. For my first sample, I used Drops Bell, my all-time favorite summer yarn, same as Sandnes Garnline and Svarta Forret. But I decided to try something new, and in this tutorial I will be knitting with that very popular cascade yarns, Ultra Pima. And for the lace sleeves, I will add a same color strand with beads alongside the main yarn. This is completely optional, but I think it adds a lovely creative touch. The one I'm using is Pearl Hen, and the other option is Bloom Hen. If you would like to try this, just make sure the thread matches the color of your main yarn, so it blends in naturally. And if you would like to substitute the yarn, go for a pure cotton or cotton blend. A good guideline is a yarn with about 110 to 120 meters or 120 to 131 yards per 50 grams. But you know, always watch. My yarn comes in a twisted hang rather than a ready-to-knit skein. So before I can start knitting, I need to wind it into a ball. I don't have any special equipment for this, so let me show you the simple way I do it. First, remove the label and carefully untwist the hang. Next, place the open hang over something wide to help it keep its shape. You can use your knees or friend's arms, but I use the back of a chair. Then find one end of the yarn and start winding a ball by hand. Work slowly and keep an eye on the hang so it doesn't slip off the chair or become tangled. At the end, you will have a yarn ball that's ready to knit with. We are knitting this top from the top down, so we will start right at the upper back, at the neckline, and work outward to the sides, creating the shoulders as we go. With the 4mm 80 cm long needles, or US size 6 and 31 inches, cast on the number of stitches for your size. I always like to use a long tail cast on, and for this tutorial I'm working a size medium. Okay, turn your work to the wrong side and purl all the way across. That's our setup row, row 0. I have a little tip for you. Before continue, take 2 removable stitch markers and place one at each side of the cast-on edge. Later, when we pick up stitches for the shoulders, it will be much easier to see where exactly to start and stop. And here how it looks. Now we get into the increase rows. On row 1, our right side row, knit 2, place a marker, and then we will make one left. To do this, pick up the strand between the stitch you just knit and the next one, going from front to back with your left hand needle. And you can also use your right needle to help with this. And knit it through the back loop. Next, knit across to the last 2 stitches. Then make one right. This time you are picking up that strand from back to front and knitting through the front loop. If it feels a little tricky to get your needle into that loop, just stretch it slightly and move it closer to the tip. That usually makes it much easier to catch. Place your second marker, knit the last 2 stitches. And that's it. We've increased 2 stitches on this row. On row 2, the wrong side row, we are going to mirror everything we just did, but in purl. So purl 2 stitches. Slip the marker. And now we will make one purl right. Pick up that strand between the stitch you just purled and the next one, this one at the front, by going from back to front with your left hand needle and purl it through the front. Purl across until you reach your next marker. Slip the marker for now, so it will be easier to make one purl left. Pick up a strand between the last stitch you purled and the next one, going from front to back with your left hand needle and purl it through the back loop. Place the marker back and purl the last 2 stitches. We've increased another 2 stitches. Now let's knit 2 more rows together, and after that you will follow the same steps in your oven rhythm. Row 3, right side. Knit 2. Slip a marker, make one left. And knit to the next marker. Make one right. Slip your marker, knit 2. 2 stitches increased. Turn your work to the wrong side and for row 4, purl 2. Slip the marker, make 1 purl right. And purl across to the next marker. Put the marker aside, make 1 purl left. Bring the marker back and purl 2. Two more stitches increased. Keep working these 2 rows, increasing on every row until you reach the number of repeats given for your size in the pattern. Once you are there, count your stitches and measure your piece from that center back cast on edge down, just to make sure everything lines up with your size before we move on. If you are off by a few centimeters or an inch, don't worry, you can adjust the length at the end of the next part. And that's back part 1 complete. In the second part of the back yoke, we are just going to have a nice little break after all those increases and knit straight. You are on the right side, so let's go. Knit 2, remove the marker, knit all the way across to the next marker. Remove this marker, knit 2 stitches. Place 2 more removable markers at the first and last stitch of this row, just like we did at the cast on edge. Now you have markers on both ends of the back piece, and we will clearly show you the shoulder boundaries when it's time to pick up stitches. Row 2, wrong side. Purl all the way across. And that's our 2-row repeat for this section. Simple, neat and purl rows, no increases, just building length. Keep repeating rows 1 and 2 until you reach the number of rows for your size. And that's back part 2 done. Now, let's check in before we move on. Count your stitches, just in case, and measure your piece from the center back cast on edge down. Both numbers should match what the pattern says for your size. If your length is a little bit off, no worries. You can add a few more rows or unravel a couple to match the measurement. And if you are off by 1 or 2 stitches, don't worry either. You can add or remove them when we will get to the joining in the round section. When you have the correct length, put your stitches on hold on a scrap yarn or a silicone cord and cut the yarn. The back section is complete. Now we are moving on to the front and we will start with the left shoulder. Place the back piece in front of you with the right side facing up. With a new yarn, we will pick up and knit stitches along the left shoulder edge. We start near the back neck, right where we placed that handy marker, and work our way toward the outer shoulder edge. Pick up the number of stitches given for your size, working between the 2 edge stitches. One stitch sits on the wrong side, the other stays on the right side. And creates a neat little chain along the edge. And stop near the other removable marker. Turn your work to the wrong side and purl all the way across. This is just a setup row, so we can start the main part on the right side. Now, we will work the first part of the shoulder. It's simple, just knit and purl rows. Right side, knit all the stitches. On the wrong side, we purl them. Keep repeating these 2 rows until you get the required number of rows. Done. And just a small thing to keep in mind. If later you feel the neckline sits a little too close to your neck and you would like it deeper, this is the place to come back and add 2 or 4 more rows. I will remind you of this later. In the second part of the left shoulder, we will shape the neckline by adding stitches at the neck edge on every right side row. Row 1, right side, knit 3, place a marker to remember to make an increase. Make 1 left. And knit to the end of the row. One stitch increased. On the wrong side, we take a little break from increasing and just purl across. Keep repeating these 2 rows until you reach the number of the rows given for your size. Let's check our progress. Gently stretch the fabric, grab a ruler and measure from the shoulder cast on edge down. If you are a little off, you can go back to the first section and add or remove 2 rows there. Also check your stitch count. If you are off by just 1 stitch, you can unravel the last 3 stitches on the wrong side and add it back with and make 1 purl left increase. But If you are off by more than one stitch, I recommend unraveling this section and knitting it again. Now, place the stitches on hold. Your left shoulder is complete. You can cut the yarn here. We won't need it anymore because next we will knit the right shoulder following the same steps but mirrored. Now let's work the right shoulder. Place the back piece in front of you with the right side facing up. With a new strand of yarn, we will pick up and knit stitches along the right shoulder edge. This time start at the outer shoulder edge, right by the marker, and work your way toward the back neck. Pick up the number of stitches for your size, working between the two edge stitches. Now you can remove the markers. Once you've picked up all your stitches, turn your work and purl across. That's our setup row. The first part is easy. It's exactly the same as the left shoulder. Knit every stitch on the right side. And purl every stitch on the wrong side. Keep going until you've worked the number of rows for your size. Now for the second part. We will shape the neckline again, but this time the increase goes at the other end of the row. On the right side, knit to the last 3 stitches. Make one right. Place a handy marker, then knit the last 3 stitches. That's 1 stitch increased. On the wrong side, simply purl across. Keep repeating these 2 rows until you've worked the number of rows for your size. Now check the length and your stitch count. The right shoulder should match the left one. And this time don't cut the yarn. We will use it to join the 2 front pieces together. Now we will join 2 front pieces into one. You are at the beginning of the row on the right side near the outer edge of the right shoulder. Knit all the stitches of the right shoulder. Now, using the backward loop method, cast on the number of stitches given for your size. These stitches will form the front neckline. Wrap the yarn around your thumb, insert the needle upward through that loop, and slip it off your thumb onto the needle. That's one stitch cast on. Slip the left shoulder stitches back onto the left needle. We slip them from the end of the row, so the needle tip will end up near the stitch with the cut yarn tail. And knit all the way across. Try to tighten the yarn tail as you go, or even better, you can secure it on the wrong side. Turn your work and purl all the stitches. Those freshly cast on stitches can feel a little awkward to work, but it's just for this one row. Then simply knit and purl rows. Right side knit, wrong side purl, until you've worked the number of rows for your size. When you need to join a new ball of yarn, do it at the edges, as they are the least noticeable spots. And if you are curious, I use the twist and weave method. I demonstrate it in detail in the Mellow Mood cardigan tutorial, and I will leave a link in the description. When you are about halfway of the front piece, try it on and check the neckline opening. It should slip comfortably over your head, and remember, we will add a rib neckline later. If you want, you can put the stitches on hold and work the neckband now. It will help you to check the fit early on, and if something feels off, it's much easier to adjust it now than later. And this is exactly what we do during the test knit. Because of differences in knitting style and the body shape, the same size doesn't fit exactly the same way. So your neckline might end up a little bit too tight or a little bit too loose. If that happens, don't panic. Just go back to section 1. Yes, I really do mean unravel back. I know, nobody likes hearing these words. Then add 4 more rows to both shoulder sections, or remove, and you will have a little more depth and width in the neckline. Trust me, future you will be very grateful. Next control point. If you've knitted the required number of rows, but your piece is a little shorter or longer, you can add or unravel a few rows. In this section, the length is more important than the exact row count. Okay, try it on again to get a sense of how it looks. The front piece should be a little bit longer than the back, and the shoulder seam sits slightly toward the back. We are ready to join the front and back into one piece and start working in the round. You are at the beginning of the row, near the outer edge of the front piece on the right side. Knit all the stitches of the front section. Then, using the backward loop method, cast on 8 stitches for the underarm. Now, transfer the back stitches onto your left needle, starting from the end of the section and working toward the yarn tail. Knit all the back section stitches. Cast on another 8 stitches for the second underarm. Place the marker here to mark the beginning of the round. And if you need to join a new ball of yarn, do it here or on the opposite side. Never join it in the middle of the round. In the next round, you can move it to the center of the underarm, between those cast on stitches. Now, knit about 10 rounds, then we will stop for another fitting. If you are using interchangeable needles, here is a little trick you might like. Try using a needle one size smaller on your left hand. It makes the stitches slide much more easily, so you don't have to push them so hard. Your stitches are formed on the right hand needle, so their size stays exactly the same. And if you are left-handed, simply do the opposite. For example, I'm knitting with a 4mm US 6 needle in my right hand and a 3.5mm needle in my left. The slightly smaller left needle creates a little extra space, so the stitches move much more smoothly. Give it a try and see if you like it. Our favorite backward loop cast on stitches. Knit them as regular stitches. When you reach the beginning of round marker, place it right at the center of the underarm, between those cast on stitches. And now we can see some real progress. I slipped half of the stitches onto a silicone cord to try it on. A couple of things to check here. First, neckline. Remember, we will be adding a few centimeters of ribbing, so it will look a little snugger than what you see now. Overall, body shouldn't be too big at this stage, and the sleeve will close up the armhole a little. So everything should be within a comfortable range. If everything looks good, great. Keep knitting until you reach your desired length. But if something feels off, this is the moment to figure out what it is. Maybe the yarn behaves differently than expected, or the gauge is slightly off. This is really the key control point where you make the decision. Do I move forward or do I take a step back? Don't be afraid to unravel. I unraveled the first sample of this top 10 times, maybe more, until I got the right fit. And trust me, you will never regret it. Well, I knitted until I reached the desired length, and before starting the ribbing, it's a great idea to try on the top with the bottom you plan to wear it with. I wasn't sure yet, so I just grabbed my favorite pair of jeans. Almost there. Now we will finish the body with a 1x1 rib. But first we will decrease a few stitches to give the bottom edge a slightly more tapered shape. Switch to a smaller needles. I'm using 3.5 millimeters or US size 4 and work the repeat of knit 8 stitches and knit 2 together. So knit 8, knit 2 together, and repeat this sequence until you reach the end of the round. You may have a few stitches left at the end, and that's completely fine. Just count your stitches and make sure you have an even number. If you don't, knit the last 2 stitches together. Now work a 1 by 1 rib for 6 rounds. Knit 1 stitch, purl 1 stitch, and repeat to the end of the round. I like to tighten the purl stitches just a little. It helps the ribbing look much more even. Repeat the same pattern for the next 5 rounds. Last step, bind off loosely. I stretch each stitch a little as I bind it off to create slightly larger loops. There are stretcher bind-off methods, but they take much longer and they are not easy to unravel if you ever need to make changes. That's why I use the basic bind-off for all my projects. And that's the body finished. Now we can finally move on to my favorite part, the lace sleeves. For the sleeves, you have 2 options, a plain stockinette sleeve or a lace sleeve. I already knitted 1 sleeve because I wanted to test this beaded thread. It's completely optional, but I think it adds a lovely little accent. You can also use a thread with tiny sequins like this one. And because the thread is so fine, it won't affect your gauge. One thing I learned is to choose a decorative thread that's the same color as your main yarn, while the beads should be a contrasting color. I once paired pink yarn with pink beads and they almost disappeared. Sequins are a little more forgiving because their shimmer catches the light, so they will still stand out even if they are the same color as your yarn. Both sleeve options start exactly the same way, so you can try the lace version first, and if it feels like too much, you can always unravel it and knit the plain stockinette sleeve instead. For this lace pattern, we don't work any sleeve decreases, so you can knit the entire sleeve on 40 centimeters, 16-inch circular needles. I especially recommend this if it's your first lace project. Of course, you can also use double-pointed needles or magic loop. I will be using magic loop. To make picking up stitches easier, divide the armhole into 4 sections with stitch markers. This will help you pick up the stitches evenly along the edge. Using your larger needles, 4mm US size 6, start at the center of the underarm and pick up the number of stitches for your size. Please note that the plain and lace sleeves require different stitch counts. For example, for my size medium with the lace sleeves, I'm picking up 72 stitches. If you are using a beaded thread, start with the end that doesn't have any beads yet. Since the beads are arranged in the same order along the thread, this helps avoid having too many of them sitting under the arm. With a sequin thread, it doesn't matter because the sequins are much more closely spaced. Around the underarm, I pick up every available stitch to help prevent holes. Then I switch to picking up every other stitch along the armhole. Whenever a bead appears, slide it gently to the right side of the fabric. That way it won't rub against your skin and all the beads will be visible from the outside. If a few beads stay on the wrong side while you are knitting, don't worry. You can move them to the right side once you have finished. Tiny sequins don't usually need any adjustment, but if you are using larger sequins, move those to the right side as well. At my first marker, I should have 18 stitches, because 72 divided by 4 equals 18. If your count is off by a stitch or two, simply go back a few stitches and change the order in which you picked them up. There is no need to start over. Repeat the same process for the remaining sections. By the end, you should have the correct number of stitches. If you don't, just go back 10 to 15 stitches and adjust your pickup. And place the beginning of round marker. If you are using magic loop, here is how I divide my stitches. I keep 16 stitches on the left needle. Make a loop, then 16 stitches on the right needle and make another loop. The remaining 40 stitches stay on the cable. This setup works really well with our 8-stitch lace repeat. I will show you in a moment. If you are knitting the plain version, simply knit every stitch in every round until you reach your desired sleeve length. And I will meet you again when it's time for the ribbing. If you are knitting the lace version, remember, there is nothing to be afraid of. I will guide you through every step, so you will always know exactly what to do. Let's go. Round 1. Knit all stitches. I try to keep the beads sitting on the right side of the fabric as I knit, but sometimes they slip to the wrong side, so I just move them back into place. To avoid a loose gap where the magic loop changes sides, I keep the two needle tips close together. I don't pull the first stitch super tight, but I do tighten the second stitch a little more. That usually keeps everything even. Before we continue, I would like you to add a lifeline. If you ever make a mistake, you will be able to return to this round instead of picking up all the sleeve stitches again. Thread a tapestry needle with a thin piece of waste yarn and pass it through all the leaf stitches. I like to use dental floss because it's thin, smooth and easy to remove later. Now your first round is safely secured. Round 2. The pattern repeat is knit 1, knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, slip slip knit, knit 2. That's our 8 stitch repeat for the entire round. Let's work through it. Knit 1, knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, slip slip knit, knit 2. That's one complete repeat. Continue repeating those 8 stitches all the way around. So knit 1, then knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 1, again yarn over, slip slip knit, and knit 2. If you are using magic loop, this is where my stitch setup becomes helpful. Before you move on to the next section, count the stitches you just worked and do this every single time. If you accidentally miss a yarn over and don't notice until later, you will have to go all the way back to your lifeline. Counting after each section makes mistakes much easier to catch. If you are using circular needles, simply count your stitches at the end of the round. Yes, today I am being a little strict, but I would much rather help you avoid mistakes than fix them later. Okay, let's finish the round. After the loop, it's exactly the same. Knit 1, knit 2 together, and continue repeating the pattern to the end of the round. Round 3. Knit all stitches. Knit the yarn overs just like regular stitches. Round 4. The pattern repeat for this round is knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 3, yarn over, slip slip knit, knit 1, knit 2 together, make a yarn over, knit 3. Another yarn over, slip slip knit. Knit 1. The yarn overs are balancing out the decreases, so your stitch count stays the same, and you will notice the diamond getting a little wider with every round. The knit 2 together right after the loop can feel a little awkward at first. It just takes a bit of practice, but you will get the hang of it. Finish the round. I want to show you how to fix a mistake without unraveling more than necessary. If you've been counting your stitches after every section, just like I asked, right? And you discover you are missing one stitch, let's find it together. The easiest solution is simply to unravel this section and knit it again. But if you are starting to recognize your stitches, you can unravel only as far as the mistake. For me, it's almost always a forgotten yarn over. Let's compare the knitting with the pattern. Here is the knit two together. Here is the yarn over. Here is knit free. There is the next yarn over. Now I unravel only to that point, slipping the stitches back onto my left needle one by one. I make the missing yarn over and continue knitting. Always count your stitches. It only takes a few seconds and can save you a lot of time later. By the way, if you need to join a new ball of yarn, do it near the beginning of a round marker. Round 5. Just knit all the stitches. Round 6. In this round, we need to move the marker to keep the diamond pattern aligned. If we don't, the pattern will gradually shift. Remove the marker, knit one stitch. Then place the marker back. The stitch count stays exactly the same, so you can continue following the pattern as written. If you are using magic loop like I am, I will quickly adjust my setup. I move one stitch to the left needle to bring it back to 16 stitches. Then slide one stitch from the right needle onto the cable, so that side also has 16 stitches. That leaves 40 stitches on the cable again. If you are using circular needles, you can simply ignore this part. Now let's work the pattern repeat. Yarn over, knit 5, yarn over, S2KP. Start with yarn over, knit 5 stitches. Work another yarn over and then make an S2KP or slip slip knit pass, which is a centered double decrease. Slip one stitch, knit twice, slip the next stitch, knit twice, knit one, then pass the two slipped stitches over the knitted stitch one at a time. Try not to stretch them too much. Count your stitches. You still have 8 stitches in the repeat because the 2 yarn overs replace the 2 stitches decreased. That's exactly how lace patterns work. Repeat this pattern to the end of the round. If you are using magic loop, you make the yarn over immediately after the loop and hold it gently with your finger while you knit the next stitch. Then tighten it slightly and continue knitting to the end of the round. Round 7. Here we knit all stitches. And since we just finished half of the diamond, let's protect our work with another lifeline. Next time repeat in round 1 and round 7. Round 8. Our pattern repeat for this round is yarn over, slip slip knit, knit 3, knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 1. The lace pattern changes direction and we will start closing the diamond. So yarn over, slip slip knit. And try to tighten this decrease just a little. Knit 3, knit 2 together. Again, tighten it slightly. I found that if these decreases are too loose, the diamond doesn't hold its shape as nicely. Just a gentle tug is enough. Then yarn over and knit 1. That's one complete repeat. Let's do it once more. Yarn over, slip, slip, knit, knit 3, knit 2 together. Yarn over, knit 1. And continue repeating this pattern to the end of the round. Round 9, knit all stitches. A little break for your memory before the next lace round. Round 10, we are almost there. Just one more lace round after this and we will finish our first diamond. Our pattern repeat for this round is knit 1, yarn over, SSK, knit 1, knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 2. Start with knit 1, yarn over, slip, slip, knit. Gently tighten the decrease. Knit 1, knit 2 together. Again, give it a little tighten. Yarn over, knit 2. Let's do it once more. Knit 1, yarn over, slip, slip, knit. Knit 1, knit 2 together. Yarn over, knit 2. Finish the round. Round 11, knit all stitches. Round 12. This is our last lace round and our pattern repeat is knit 2, yarn over, S2KP, yarn over, knit 3. Let's work the first repeat. Knit 2, yarn over, then work a double decrease. Slip 1 stitch, knit twice, slip the next stitch, knit twice, knit the next stitch, then pass the 2 slip stitches over the knitted stitch, one at a time. Next, work another yarn over, then knit 3. Let's do it once more. Knit 2, yarn over, S2KP, yarn over, knit 3. Now repeat this pattern to the end of the round. Well done! We knitted the first 12 rounds together and you've completed your first diamond. Now work 2 more pattern repeats. That means you go back to round 1 and repeat rounds 1 through 12 2 more times. One important reminder, move the beginning of round marker only once in round 6. Don't move it in any other round. And don't forget to keep counting your stitches. I'm going to knit my 2 repeats as well and then we will meet again for the ribbing. Once you've finished the lace pattern, switch to smaller needles. I'm changing my interchangeable tips to 3.5 millimeters US size 4. Now, work a 1 by 1 rib for 6 rounds. Every round is the same. Knit 1, purl 1, again knit 1, purl 1, and all the way around. When you are done, bind off loosely. That's one sleeve finished. Repeat the same steps for the second sleeve, and then we will add some ripped neckband and your top will be complete. Let's finish your top with the neckband. Place your top in front of you with the bag facing up. We will start at the center bag, work all the way around the neckline and finish where we started. The most important goal here is to pick up the correct number of stitches for your size. The pickup ratio I'm about to show you should help you get the right stitch count on your first try. Using the smaller 3.5 millimeters US 4 circular needles and approximately 40 to 60 centimeters or 16 to 24 inches long, not cables, not just cable, or magic loop, start by picking up every stitch across the back neckline. Next, along the straight edges of the front, pick up 2 stitches for every 3 rows. I pick up 2 stitches, skip 1, then repeat. Along the diagonal parts of the neckline, pick up also 2 stitches for every 3 rows. At the bottom of the neckline, pick up every stitch. Then repeat the same pickup ratios on the second side. 2 stitches for every 3 rows along the diagonal edge. Two stitches for every 3 rows along the straight edge. And finally, every stitch across the back neckline until you return to the starting point. Place a beginning of a round marker here and we are ready to knit the neckband. If you pick it up too many or too few stitches, start over and adjust the pickup ratio slightly this time. Now, work a 1 by 1 rib for 6 rounds, just as you did for the body and sleeves. and bind off loosely. Try on your top. If the neckline feels comfortable, you are ready to move on to the finishing touches. But if it feels a little too tight, there are a few things you can try. First, bind off again, but this time stretch each stitch slightly as you work, just like I do. And if that isn't enough, bind off using larger needles. They will naturally create larger loops, so you don't have to measure or adjust anything else. Another option is to unravel the neckband and pick up 4 to 6 more stitches before knitting it again. If it still feels too snug, knit the ribbing on larger needles as well. There are also stretchy bind-off methods that you can find on YouTube. I recommend saving those as your last option. They take much longer to work, and if you are not happy with the result, they are also much more time consuming to unravel, just like the Italian bind-off. I would try the simpler solutions first and only then move on to a stretchy bind-off if you still need more room. First, within all the yarn tails. As always, I use my smile and umbrellas method. I explain it in detail in the first sweater tutorial. I will leave a direct link to that section in the description below. If you used a beaded thread, take a few moments to move any beads that ended up on the wrong side over to the right side of the fabric. It takes a little patience. Now, carefully remove all your lifelines. Don't pull them out in one go, as that can stretch your stitches. Instead, cut them in a few places and gently remove each section. Do the same for any lifelines you placed in the body. Now it's time for a gentle bath. You can also use steam instead of wet blocking, but I personally prefer washing the finished garment. I like knowing it's clean before wearing it, and I also find that wet blocking relaxes the stitches more evenly than steam. Okay, fill a sink or basin with lukewarm water and add a gentle detergent. I use a Eucalan and absolutely love it because it doesn't need to be rinsed, but any gentle detergent will work. Submerge your top, gently press it into the water for about a minute until it's fully soaked. Then let it rest for around 20 minutes. That's enough time for the stitches to relax and even out. If your detergent requires rinsing, rinse the top in lukewarm water. And if you are using a non-rinse wash like the Eucalan, simply squeeze out the excess water. Next, roll the top inside an old towel, like a cinnamon roll, and gently press to remove more moisture. This helps it dry much faster. Lay it flat on a blocking mat, a drying rack, or simply on a towel on the floor. A drying rack is ideal because air can circulate from both sides. Gently shape the top to its finished measurements. You will find them in the pattern. If you would like just a little more length, you can carefully stretch it while it's still damp. Then leave it alone and let it dry completely. And your Monoko Tee is finished. Thank you for knitting it together with me. I hope you enjoyed every step of this project, learned a few new techniques, and now feel confident enough to try even more lace patterns. Enjoy wearing your beautiful top, and I will see you soon in the next tutorial. Bye bye.